Hey guys, Christian the Haver Card Man here today, coming at you with my first ever Magic the Gathering deck profile and the first video in This Grass Looks Greener deck profile and construction series. This is the start of my series where I'm going to take my mono green, at the current moment, Devotion deck for standard. We're just going to evolve it as time goes on. So we're going to start off with this pure Devotion build, and then as time goes on and we start to get new blocks into the standard format, we will adapt with it and keep this deck rolling along with that. So anyways, let's go ahead and get started today without any further ado. And if you do enjoy this content, be sure to hit that like button as well as subscribe and the bell notification for future uploads like this. And so let's go ahead, cut the BS, and get right into it. So starting off, we are running 16 Forest. I know it doesn't really sound like much, but we are also alongside it running our full playset of Field of Ruin. If I can get it out here, we'll just throw it out like that. Our full playset of Field of Ruin. So this way, we can use it right away to get a colorless mana, or we can actually sacrifice it to destroy a non-basic land opponent controls and search for another forest, put it onto the battlefield untapped. You really don't need more than 20 land, though. This deck has a decent enough time mana ramping that I have not really had to worry about being mana screwed, and I haven't been mana flooded. So far, 20 land has been like optimal. If you don't have the 4 Field of Ruin, or if you have better lands to swap in, feel free to do so. This is just what I happen to have on hand from the cards of, or from the standard cards that I currently have. So once again, if you have better options than Field of Ruin, feel free to swap them in. This is just a base template, and I'm just showing you what I'm playing with and what I have fun with at my local FNM. And we'll go ahead and start off with like the main base of our deck, the main part of our engine that really makes everything run. We're running a full playset of Elysian Caryatid. I'm going to apologize now. I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these names, but you get the basic premise. So just a 1/1 for 1 and a green, and you can tap it to add any mana, or like 1 mana of any color. And then if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, which is not hard to do in this deck, you can get 2 mana of any one color instead. So the nice thing about this guy is that not only does it give us extra mana, it allows us to go into any color we want. So it makes it really easy to splash in multicolored cards that's in this deck, and that's exactly what I've done, and it's actually really done a lot of good for this deck. So next up, we have our Dryad of the Elysian Grove, another mana ramp. I only need 1 though, because it just allows you to play an additional land on each of your turns, and you don't necessarily always need that. It is definitely good in the early game, especially if you've got a few land in your hand. You can get those out a lot quicker and get into your bigger creatures. Come later game, though, the only reason you really need it is for the second effect, and that's the fact that it's lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. So next up, this is our first actual Devotion card. We have Setessan Petitioner for 1 and 2 green. Just a 2/2 body, but when it enters the battlefield, you gain life equal to your Devotion to green. Really handy because you do get plenty of green on the field, and if you start to get low on life, it is nice to have that one little backup, but I really don't need running more than 1 because, for the most part, the games with this deck are over pretty quick. I get some pretty good attack power on the field very quickly. And speaking of which, next up we are running 2 Renata Called to the Hunt, another Devotion card. For 2 colorless, 2 green, your power is equal to your Devotion to green for Renata, and whenever other creatures enter your battlefield under your control, they get a +1/+1 counter. So you're beefing up all your creatures by an additional +1/+1 for every time that you play one after this, and it gives you another 2 to your Devotion. And another Devotion card here, we have 1 Nylea's Huntmaster. Don't really need to run more than 1. It just adds like that bonus power. It gives one of your target creatures +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is your Devotion to green. So it's good if you need like an extra beater on the turn for a reason. But I have better win cons than Nylea's Huntmaster, so I really only need 1. Especially with the fact that it's so easy to search through this deck for the creatures you really need and like the real key pieces. Next up, we have 2 copies of Nylea's Forerunner. 5/3 with trample, and other creatures you control have trample. This is one of our win cons for the deck. We really just have to play the beatdown game. But if we can pull a Nylea's Forerunner out and we already have a field established, then, well, now we have the means to just like attack for game. But next up, we have 2 copies of Nylea Keen-Eyed. Just a god card for the deck. It's actually really helpful. Gives you a 5/6 indestructible body because you usually have the Devotion easily meant to have it be a creature. But then creature spells you cast also cost 1 less to cast, so really just easy to play there, super nice. And purely for Devotion and tough body, we have a Nyxborn Colossus, just a 6/7 body for 3 colorless and 3 green. So super handy, builds you another 3 green Devotion. It's a 6/7 body. If you already have your Renata on the field, it becomes a 7/8, so that's a dangerous body for your opponent to deal with. It is an enchantment creature if any of you feel like playing like a Constellation version of this deck for whatever reason. I myself am not too keen of Constellations, especially in green, but if that's the route you want to take, definitely go for it. Next up, we have a Gargos Vicious Watcher. Honestly, if I get another one of these, I'm going to swap out my Nyxborn Colossus because this is way more worth the 6 mana. You get an 8/7 Vigilance body. Sure, the Hydra spells you cast cost 4 less to cast is beneficial. It's not really necessary unless you are running 2 of these, but at the same time, they're also legendary creatures, so it's really not all that helpful. And then whenever a creature becomes the target of a spell, it fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. That is mandatory. But really helpful, especially since you have an 8/7 body, and once again, if you've got Renato on the field, it becomes a 9/8. So it's really not that big of a deal, and it adds another 3 devotion to your field. So there's like no downsides really to running Gargos. It'll help you clear your opponent's field with the fighting that has vigilance, and just overall an awesome card. Now, next up, we are running 2 Nyx Bloom Ancient. We are playing quite a few, actually, pretty high mana cost drops because they're super easy to play, especially if you get Nylea out on the field, so they cost 1 less, so this guy would only become a 6-drop. So for 4 colorless and 3 green, you're getting a 5/5 trample body, not bad. Its second ability is what makes it really important, and that's the fact that if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. The nice thing is he's not a legendary creature, so you can actually have 2 of these guys out on the field at the same time, and now everything that you produce, or everything that produces mana, now produces 9 mana. So that covers it for just our green creatures. So now we'll go ahead and move on to our multicolored creatures, which I think are honestly almost just as vital as the green creatures. Maybe not as much, but they are definitely huge powerhouses of the deck, and they make really good standalone cards. So we're running 1 Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath, just 6/6. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. And whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you gain 3 life and draw a card. That you may put a land from your hand on the battlefield. So it's another mana ramper. It allows you to draw through your library to get to the cards you really need. And you can gain life off of it. So really, there's nothing wrong playing this guy. And it's another 6/6 body if you actually get it to stick on the field. Which is the escape cost, not even too bad. 2 green, 2 blue. That's really easy to meet with this deck. And you just have to exile 5 other cards from your graveyard, which is also not hard to get cards in your graveyard. So really a well-balanced card for this deck, and like honestly, I think a must-have at 1. It's a really good card to have in here. Next up, we have 2 Colossus, God of Destiny, just another god, another 4/5 indestructible body. As long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, it's not a creature, which it's super easy to meet that condition once again. It is a 3-drop, so you will likely be getting out easier, but its second ability makes it worth it. At the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you exile target card from your graveyard, and if it's a land card, you can add a red or a green mana, and otherwise you gain 2 life, and it deals 2 damage to each opponent. So you're either getting a little bit of burn and life gain off each turn, or you're getting mana ramping. Either way, a very, very helpful card for this deck, and can really build you to like that end board condition state where you can just attack all at once for game and like not even have to be worried. Next up, we'd run 2 Warden of the Chained, 4/4 with trample for 1 colorless, a blue, green, and a red. And whenever he cannot attack unless you control with another creature with power 4 or greater. So that part's not really bad because once again you can meet that power 4 or greater really easily. But it counts another 2 devotion to Colossus, and not only that, he's a 4/4 body with trample. So just having him out on the field honestly is a really intimidating thing. Even if you can't attack with him right away, he's still a good blocker. A 4/4 body for 3 mana is nothing to laugh about. So I really think the trade-off of him not being able to attack unless you control another creature with power 4 or greater is really kind of meaningless, especially for this deck. And then our last multicolored card, we have Acolyte of Affliction. This is the one case where we do need black, and that is because he is actually really good. 2/3 bodies, so not too crazy there, but when he enters the battlefield, you put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, and you can return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. So it's good for either recovery. If someone took out a really important piece on your field, you can use them to recover that back to your hand and play it again. Or you can just use it to further search out your decks, because you're putting another 2 cards into the graveyard, and then if those 2 cards were something you needed, boom, you can use that to add it back to your hand. It actually works really well with another card that we're playing here in the deck, which is, ooh, actually, I'm not sure how this happened, but my deck got mixed up here. There's actually 2 copies of Acolyte of Affliction. I don't know how that happened. I knew that there was 2 in there, and I don't know why it didn't process. So we got 2 of those for more searching, but it actually works really well with our 4 copies of Relentless Pursuit, because this sorcery lets us reveal the top 4 cards of our library, and then we can put a creature and or land from them into our hands. So You can either use it to mana ramp, or you can use it to get a really powerful creature for your combo into your hand, and then put the rest in the graveyard. So even if you can only get one of those cards that you need right away, you'll still have the rest for later that you can access with your Acolytes of Affliction. So really still helpful there. So that's all we have for our multicolored, so we'll go and put those away. And the Relentless Pursuit is actually a really good segue onto the next section, which is our green sorceries and instants. So we've got obviously our full playset of Relentless Pursuit. Once again, super handy card. Pretty much a must run in this deck because it lets you search out your big pieces right away and get straight into what you need. We are running 1 Return to Nature and 1 Plummet. Just a couple of removal spells. Don't really come across them too often. Being able to destroy an artifact or an enchantment's really good, or at instant speed, be able to exile target from a graveyard. So if you're playing against a graveyard deck that's trying to bring something back, you can pop this out really quick and take that out. Or Plummet, this deck does have a little bit of a problem with flying. There's not really any flying in here to block or reach to block flyers. So having that 1 Plummet in there, I'll probably put in the sideboard more copies of these two so I can side those in when I actually need them. But for now, really only having 1 copy of each has not been too detrimental to me. Then we're running 2 copies of Hydra's Growth. Just when it enters the battlefield, you put a 1/1 counter on an enchanted creature. And at the beginning of your upkeep, double the number of 1/1 counters on enchanted creature. So mostly, if you have Renata out, most of your creatures are already going to have a 1/1 counter on them. So you just play Hydra's Growth, give them another one, and then at the beginning of your next upkeep, that doubles into 4. So it's a really easy way to like just ramp up the power of your creatures very, very quickly and make them like just super menacing boss monsters within like no time at all. Now we have 2 more instant sorceries left. We have Shared Summons, just 1 copy. I really want to find more of these. I just gotta find people that have them because I'd rather trade than just buy online. So I'm gonna see if I can find some people that might have a copy or 2. But it just allows you to search your library for up to 2 creatures with different names, reveal them, and put them in your hand, and then shuffle your library. So this really allows you to search out the important key parts, like Nyx Blue Mage. There's a couple times where I've had to search out Elysian Caryatids because I didn't have one on the field, or searching out things like Nylea or even Renata. Just really any of your important monsters. It makes it a lot easier to get into any of the really necessary creatures that you need for your board. And then last up, we have 2 copies of Colossus's Design. Creatures you control get +X until end of turn, where X is your devotion to green. So if I have the ability to give all of my creatures trample, and I've had Renata who's been boosting them all with the counters, and then I play Hydra's Growth and getting a couple of my creatures to like massive levels, and then I just drop this on you, and say I've got like 18 devotion on the field. Well, now I have a bunch of creatures that all have +18, a couple with some extra counters on them, and they all have trample. That's just game. Like, you can just swing for game, and you can usually do it by like turn 6 or 7, and it's super easy. It doesn't even really matter what they have established at that point, unless they can play like some kind of fog ability. You're pretty much in the clear. So like, this is just a way to just wipe out opponents without any chance of them really knowing what's going on. So Colossus' Design, definitely need to run it too. I don't know if I really need more than that because it is a win con for the deck, but you don't really want to like flood your hand with like 3 different copies of them. Just because you can't always play them, and if you end up with that many copies of like your opening hand, it kind of slows the deck down a little bit. So I really like running the 2 because I do see it often enough that I pretty much always win with this. This is usually what gets me the victory. And if not, I have plenty of other ways to get my powerhouses out and just be able to swing for game. So that's it for our instants and sorceries. We'll take a look at the 5 artifacts that I have in this deck. 4 copies of Altar of the Pantheon. Obviously, we cannot have a devotion deck in Theros Beyond Death as being our newest set in standard without playing 4 Altar of the Pantheons, because it boosts your devotion to green, and then you can tap it to add a mana of any color. So, and then if you control a god or a demigod or a legendary champion, you gain a life. So really, I can use this thing, realistically, I can use it to get 3 mana because I'll have Nyx Blue Mage on the field, most likely. And then I'll be able to gain a life because mostly I've got my Nylea or my Renata out, or I've just got, or my Colossus. I have plenty of ways to get that life gain, so it's just a huge bonus all around. Like, that just boosts my devotion for each one of these that are out. Like, there's no downside to playing this card, especially for only being a 3-drop. So if the turns really go well, I'll open up, and then I'll be able to turn 2, play Elysian Caryatid, turn 3, go into an Altar of the Pantheon, turn 4, I'll have 5 mana to play, and I can possibly start gaining life if I have the right cards. And then lastly, for our deck, the very last card we have is a Bag of Holding. actually a surprisingly good card for this deck. I didn't anticipate it to perform as well as it does, but it just allows you to cycle through your deck to get into the combo pieces you really need. Say like you have this in your opening hand, and you also have a Colossus design in your opening hand. You really want to make sure that Colossus design is safe, and you also know that you don't have the means to play it right away or make it even useful. So you use this to draw a card from your library, sort through what you need more, and then get the Colossus design set aside so you can bring it back later and just know that you've got that piece secured and ready to go. So really, it is actually a surprisingly good tool for this deck. I don't need more than one, though, because I see this more often than I really think I would, which is totally fine by me, because it's a really good card, especially for turn 1. If you can turn this or get this out turn 1, you're sitting pretty good. So yeah, that's it for my green deck today. This has been the first episode of This Grass is Greener, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this deck profile. I will possibly be doing some live games if I can get some people that are okay with it at my local FNM. I might see if I can do a video or two with them, just to kind of showcase it off, because it's honestly been a really fun deck to play. And I'm not a huge green player, at least not mono green, so I've actually been really surprised by this deck and the amount of power it has. So it's super cool to see that it's doing this well. And yeah, I really look forward to doing more of this in the video. Once again, I do plan on keeping this like up to date with Standard. This, my little dilly deck box, this will go with me to my FNMs every week that I go, and I will try to keep this updated with Standard as much as possible. So thank you guys all for watching this today. Once again, if you enjoyed the content, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe and bell notification, and we will see you guys all in the next video. Peace out.